Never would have guessed that a movie would manage to make tardigrades look menacing. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 20th movie in the MCU, Marvel's 2018 superhero sequel, Ant-Man and the Wasp. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Ant-Man and the Wasp stars Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, and Michael Douglas, and was directed by Peyton. It tells the story of Scott Lang, who once again takes up the mantle of Ant-Man to help Hope and Hank venture into the quantum realm for a subatomic rescue mission. It's remarkable how much of an effect timing can have on our perceptions of a film. It's a factor that, ironically, dissolves away with time, but it can have a big impact early on. Although the MCU is a franchise that most people probably pick at kind of randomly on rewatch, especially with just how many movies there are now, the order of release is important, at least the first time around. The universe part of the MCU ensures that there are entangled and interconnected stories, so the information that you get in one movie often comes into play in the next. The MCU's order hasn't always been perfectly logical, but Ant-Man and the Wasp's placement is one of the more bizarre decisions that I think ended up hurting this film. This movie was released not even 2.5 months after Avengers Infinity War. With audiences still reeling from the shocking ending of that film, they came to Ant-Man and the Wasp looking for answers. But apart from a pretty solid mid-credit scene, they found a comedy that acted like Infinity War hadn't even happened. Because it hadn't yet, chronologically speaking. This sequel is very much like the first film, in the sense that it's a lighter, comedic take on the Marvel formula. On one hand, having a breezy comedy following on the heels of a film like Infinity War is sort of a nice break, giving audiences a chance to emotionally recover a bit and have some fun. But, on the other hand, it makes said breezy comedy feel downright inconsequential. Of course, none of that matters when you're watching the movies out of order after the fact, but it's a frustration that I think is stuck with a lot of people. Since this film is tonally similar to the first Ant-Man movie, humor and family ties are once again the driving forces. Paul Rudd is still very entertaining here, and Scott and Cassie have some more really sweet moments together. This movie lacks some of the origin story training humor of the first film, but it makes up for that with the team-based dynamic between Scott and Hope, as Ant-Man and the Wasp, respectively. This definitely feels more like a Wasp film, which I am totally okay with. I like Ant-Man as much as the next film goer, but I had been excited to see what Hope could do ever since her very restricted participation in the events of the first Ant-Man film. She doesn't disappoint here, and has some especially exciting fight scenes. Compared to the first film, the story is a little bit more involved this time around, but still takes a very straightforward approach. Rather than a heist, this story can be boiled down to a rescue mission. The plot itself isn't very complex. There's just a lot of problems that arise, so it feels like there are a lot of subplots going on, even though they're all working towards the same end goal. The MacGuffin chasing adventure gets a little repetitive, and there's a lot of exposition throughout, but it keeps moving at an enjoyably fast pace. I also think that this film had a better villain, or villains, I suppose, than the first movie did. The antagonists here are nothing to write home about, and still manage to come off as kind of inconsequential, but at least they're more interesting than Obadiah Light from the previous Ant-Man film. One thing that's always been a little disappointing about this movie for me is the subplot with Janet Pym, the original Wasp. Maybe disappointing isn't the right word, because I do enjoy the whole rescue mission component. It just feels like it was cobbled together at the last minute, despite being the central plot piece. Maybe it makes more sense to people who have read an Ant-Man comic before, but everything to do with Janet felt like it sparked more questions than it answered. There were too many contrived or overly convenient things with timing or location or information, and none of it was explained. I've always wished that they had spent a little bit more time expounding on her time in the quantum realm, but it looks like they were holding off on that for the third film. Just like the first Ant-Man, Ant-Man and the Wasp is a really enjoyable time. There are plenty more size-altering shenanigans, and it's difficult not to get a kick out of tiny things becoming big and big things becoming tiny. In fact, it seems like the size shifts were more creatively integrated into the action scenes this time around, so it's just really fun to watch. Also, it's hard not to like a movie in which a tardigrade is a legitimate threat to a character. It's about time tardigrades get mainstream recognition, and what better way than in a movie about a giant Pez dispenser and a tiny man who flies around on ants. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number 1 is the Wasp, specifically Hope as the Wasp. As fun as the first film was, she was really underutilized there. There was a sort of explanation within the story for it, but it was kind of frustrating, because she was clearly the most skilled person for the job. So it's satisfying that she's actually utilized pretty well here. While Scott's Ant-Man antics often come across as comedic or goofy, her Wasp action is precise and effective. Their team-ups are fun, but she's still the more skilled of the two. The second pro has gotta be the size-altering shenanigans. The shrinking scenes were the most enjoyable aspect of the first film for me, and they're super fun here too. Size shifting is used much more often in this movie, and it's continuously integrated into scenes like fight sequences or car chases. This one also uses giant, tiny things a lot more often, like some lab-assisted ants, which adds to the fun and humor. On the con side, the biggest issue is the exposition. In general, I tend to have a higher tolerance for exposition than most people. It honestly doesn't usually bother me, but most of the exposition here feels like straight information dumps. There are a lot of new things and people introduced in this film, and rather than establishing them and building their significance through the story, there are scenes that almost feel like somebody asked for a bulleted list of important things to know from the comics, but it comes across as just that. Regurgitated information thrown at us without much story connection. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Ant-Man and the Wasp or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Ant-Man and the Wasp 3.5 out of 5 paws. This is another fairly lighthearted and comedic entry in the MCU that's just about on par with the first Ant-Man film. It's got some story issues, but the size-changing fun and expanded utilization of the Wasp make for a highly enjoyable time. I would recommend Ant-Man and the Wasp to people who enjoyed the breezy, fun nature of the first Ant-Man movie and want another similar MCU film. This one trends a tiny bit angstier than the first film, but it's still a light, fun film that's tonally miles away from its immediate predecessor, Avengers: Infinity War. If you thought that Hope was underutilized in the first film, or if you want some more insight into the quantum realm, then you're in for a treat, because there's a lot more of both this time around. If you liked Ant-Man and the Wasp, I would recommend Them. Like this Ant-Man sequel, Them features some giant ants, only these guys aren't interested in helping out with lab work. Even though the premise and the poster make this one seem like a goofy B-movie, this cautionary sci-fi tale is much more than just a monster movie. If you like the idea of perpetual shrinking within the quantum realm, you might want to watch The Incredible Shrinking Man. This is another more thoughtful than expected sci-fi tale with a shrinking race against time. We don't see any tardigrades here, but there are a few memorable scenes featuring unexpected animal dangers. And if you'd just rather stick with superhero fun, I've obviously gotta recommend the first Ant-Man movie, which establishes our three leads and provides an entertaining introduction to the Ant-Man powers. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Ant-Man and the Wasp? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite superhero team-up movie? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies. the way life should be.